Morning to you. Yes, today's message is quite a challenging one that I had to straight away consult definition. In preparing for the sermon, I was quite intrigued. I want to find out what is the basic difference between theft, burglary, and robbery. You ever thought of it? Sounds the same, but this is what I found out. What are the three having in common? They all involve unauthorized taking of somebody's personal property by another person. We sometimes call it stealing. Beyond this shared link or the similarity, they are all different crimes. I did not consult my lawyer son. I just have to look at. All right. Theft. Theft is the most basic of three crimes. A theft occurs when there's unauthorized taking of property from another with the intent of permanently depriving that person of the property. Burglary is simply the unlawful entry into a structure, into a place, such as a home or business, with the intent to commit a crime inside. Although many burglaries involve theft, the crime intended can be any crime, from theft to murder or otherwise. Robbery. Robbery is essentially theft accomplished through the use of physical force or fear. Fear or intimidation is what I'd like to cover today. Fear or intimidation is what I would like to us to remember. For example, when you place your purse or wallet on the table at the hawker center, which we sometimes take for granted. We just put our purse, our wallet, our handphone. Your tissue no count lah. Tissue is no big deal. But purse, wallet, laptop, whatever. Someone come along, simply take it away without your notice. When you turn away, you get distracted, they take it along. That would be theft. But demanding that you hand over your purse or your personal belonging in a most threatening way or violently snatching it away, that would be robbery. Enough of this definition. I really hope none of us will be caught in this in the most literal sense, theft, burglary or robbery. But we can also commit spiritual robbery. And that is the warning that we have from this lesson that we intend to cover today. In Acts chapter 12, King Herod Agrippa did not secretly, in the middle of the night, resorted to theft or robbery. He did it right in the daylight. To me, what he did amounted to daylight robbery. Again, not of wealth or possession, because he was a wealthy guy, very wealthy as a king. But he robbed God of the glory of God. Now you may ask, are we able to rob God of His glory? Are we able? I liken Herod's daylight robbery of a different kind. And if God were to deal with us as He did with Herod, King Herod, there will be many corpses lying around today. Thank God He's a very compassionate and gracious God. And of course, thank God we are not caught in any similar or same position like Herod. But the fact is, we may knowingly or unknowingly be robbing God. And that's a very serious warning. We may be knowingly or unknowingly be robbing God of His glory. How do we rob God of His glory? How can we guard against this? This is the crux of today's message. Let's go to the preceding passage of before we reach Acts chapter 12. Now, if you might recall the church in crisis, the last sermon that we had, Peter had been delivered miraculously from prison. He left for another place, Acts chapter 12, 17. The next scene is where King Herod Agrippa meets his fate. Now, he had tried to eliminate Peter. Instead, he was eliminated here. The judgment came through in the following. We ask, what was the situation that prompted King Agrippa to make the appearance and deliver his public speech? What made him come to that point where we read that he appeared before the people and he gave an oration? Who was Herod after all? And why did God strike him down? Why did God strike him down instantly? This was an instant judgment, and dealt with him in a very, you might say, a very brutal way. His death was very brutal if you read the account. Why? What was the situation that he actually stood up before the people and make that oration? Apparently, King Herod was highly displeased. There was a dispute between the two cities, Tyre and Sidon, over the provision of food. So there was a dispute, and these two cities really needed trade. They needed trade and commerce to survive in that region. In the end, instead of fighting, both cities came to a reconciliation with King Herod Agrippa. So they convinced Blastus, the chamberlain, or like the personal chief of staff, that they must make up with King Herod Agrippa. So King Herod Agrippa's anger was appeased. So the region reached an agreement. Of course, the king felt victorious over it. It was a political victory for him. And he wanted to give his victory speech. So there he was to stand before the crowd and to give a public speech to commemorate the new arrangement. Thanks to him, he has managed to bring them together. Now there's peace between the two cities, and he has done it. Of course, we know he has probably done it out of intimidation. Who will simply submit to you? But you are the higher authority, higher power. They were definitely been intimidated. Now, who was King Herod Agrippa I? Look at it in the chart in the red portion. He's a grandson of Herod the Great, the one who ruled over Judea at the time of Jesus' birth. He was popular among the Jews. The Jewish leaders were highly opposed to the new movement. At the time, the Christian group were a new group, and they were called the followers of the way. And the Jews were not happy with this new, so-called new sect. In order to be popular and close to the main Jewish leadership, Herod Agrippa wanted to please them, and so he turned very hostile towards the believers. More so, he wanted to please them. And remember, in the last sermon, he went about to persecute the church. And what did he do? He executed James, the brother of John, with the violent hand, or with a sword. Now, I hope all this bring back to you the memories, the last sermon. We also saw that they arrested Peter, and they were about to kill him until God delivered him out of prison, opened all the gates, and he walked out. Those were the lessons we have covered. Why did God strike Herod Agrippa instantly? And why dealt in such a brutal manner? Verse 21 of Acts 12 says, upon a set day, King Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon this throne and made an oration. So he put on his royal robe and began to speak as a royalty before his subject. Now, just a quick look at his colorful, eventful history. He's born BC 10, grandson of Herod the Great. His father grew up Aristobulus grew up in Rome, and after his father was executed, he lived like a playboy. This guy lived like a playboy, but he was assisted by Herod Antipas, his uncle, and he later on returned to Rome, and he offended the emperor then, Tiberius, ended up in prison, was only a year after Tiberius' death that he regained control. So he has a very colorful political career, you might say. He began his rule over the northeast region, and when his uncle was banished, he began his rule. In AD 41, more territory were added to him. AD 41, not only in the northeast, but the whole of Judea and Samaria came under his rule. So he gained that title, King of the Jews. You see this, his history. He gained the title King of the Jews. He reigned over Judea, Samaria, and Galilee. If you understand Judea, Samaria, Galilee is a big place. It's a big place. Transjordan, Decapolis. This is a very vast area, and no wonder. This must have inflated his ego. This must have inflated his so-called self-worth. So when the people began to exalt him and compare him to a god, what did he do? Of course, I am a god. He simply accepted it. He accepted the praise, but this praise, this acceptance became his downfall. He did not rebuke the people, nor did he even try to politely reject this impious flattery. You know, in political scene, there are people who praise you, but come on, they can be very impious at giving you flattery because they want to either please you or get some favor back. So he did not even rebuke them or try to make a show out of his humility, so-called. He literally assumed the glory on himself. And I think he might really believe that he was the demigod or he's like God. So he accepted the people's praise and worship. In verse 22 says, the people shouted, "It's the voice of God, not of a man." Verse 22. And 23 was his immediate result. The angel of the Lord smote him because he gave not God the glory. And look at verse 23. He was eaten up by worms and gave up the ghost. Now, this eaten of worms speaks of very severe internal causes. Now, the exact disease is not known, but imagine that you suddenly die or eaten of worms right in your whole body, your stomach, and then it crawls out. Wow, that was a gory sin. But that's instant judgment. These worms surely ate him first from the inside and out. And what the terrible sin is, but whoever see this sight will have to stop and wonder, is this God's judgment? No ordinary person will just simply collapse and then you find worms crawling out of his stomach. Instant judgment. Herod's death was instantaneous. God's judgment was very swift and immediate. Again, we ask, why did God deal with King Herod Agrippa so severely? The point is, God is passionately jealous for his own glory. Today, as we come to worship God, this is one very important point that we must grapple with. God is passionately jealous for his own glory. He will share his glory with no one else. Obviously, King Herod was well above his head and his heart. Look at 1 Chronicles 29:11, where he says, "Thine, O Lord, is the greatness, the power, and the glory." God's glory, it belongs to him. Your victory, your majesty. And Isaiah 42 says, "I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory will I not give to anyone or another, neither my praise to graven image." So don't ever take my glory and give it to someone. Don't ever link me to any graven image. 48 verse 11, Isaiah. "For how should my name be polluted such an act will mean you are polluting God's name. I will not give my glory unto another. I mean, there can be no doubt about what the Lord demands of His own glory. Ponder upon it ourselves today. How do we rob God of His glory? How? To attempt robbing God of His glory is not only to deny or refuse to acknowledge His work, like some people do. They refuse to acknowledge God's work. They refuse to acknowledge God's doing. They think everything is what I've done. I did it my way. But to attribute to, not only that, attribute to, if you don't attribute to yourself, attribute to someone else, it is also robbing God. Worst of all, to assume yourself. The worst crime will be to assume that you did it, you are the cause of it, you are in the place of God. Now, isn't it a very fearful thing? If you read the whole passage, it's a fearful thing if God is going to deal with His children so severely and so instantly. Thank God that He does not always act like He did to King Agrippa. Still this morning we must beware that we do not rob God of His glory. King Herod robbed God of His glory right in the opening settings before his subject, before all his people. It was a public display. He tried to claim all glory to himself. The people must have also been carried away. As I say, they must been carried away by fear. The King Herod must have stroked and demanded it somehow, threatened them, maybe. And then now he relished the moment where he stand before them and he give a public address, and he very well must have believed that he was a God, a mini God, or he's like God. Whichever, he took the place, he thought he could take the place of God. How do we rob God of His glory? As we have already established, robbery is essentially theft through use of physical force, fear, or intimidation. I am sure he must have used this fear, intimidation, force, and he took what did not belong. He did not belong to him. So in verse 21, he said he was with that royal apparel, and the people shouted, "It's the voice of God." It reminds me of history. I'm sure some of us are old enough to recall the Beatles. If you don't know Beatles, maybe you're not old enough. But in history, the Beatles make huge sensation when they took the music scene in the 60s. 60s, I was very young, but I know there's such a group called the Beatles. In the March 66, John Lennon proclaimed this: we're more popular than Jesus now. And I don't know which will go first, rock and roll or Christianity. Right in the 60s, what he meant is that they were more popular than Jesus because of the singing. Also because of their crazy fan base, the whole world, global sensation, the whole world was talking about Beatles. Jesus was, that's what they claim, Jesus was all right, but his disciples are actually very ordinary. Look at us, the fame that we have. Then, of course, you must have heard of this Hollywood celebrity, no need to mention his name. She led a perfect life. She dreamed of remarkable wealth. Not dream, she actually attained great wealth and fame. She was blessed, so-called, with the beauty. One day, during filming, it was said that she was visited by Billy Graham. And Billy Graham said the Spirit of God has brought him to preach to her. And after hearing what the preacher has said, she said, "I don't need your Jesus." A week later, she was found dead in her bedroom. This is a most accepted theory that said she was suffering from depression and committed suicide. But one thing is agreed, she seems to have mocked God right there and then. It was actually the right time for her to seek God. If you were in depression, and you are undergoing such tremendous stress, then the preacher come along to point you to God. It was the right time to seek God. There she mocked God and said, I don't need you. And that's the result of someone who mocked God in modern days. Today we have artists and celebrities. I'm sure the face did no introduction. They are really rich, successful, influential. They are well liked by the general mass, and the list includes some of the surprisingly, even Bill Gates is included in this list of so-called celebrities, but who are atheists, who does not have God in their regard. They may have done great philanthropy, work for the society, but they don't regard God. So we are warned that if you really want to honor God, we must honor God as God. We must worship Him as He is, and what He alone decrees. To honor God as anything else is not honoring, is dishonorable. To honor God only as God, we must worship Him as He is, and He alone decrees, not what your whims and fancy is. The very harsh or real message for us this morning is that we can also fall into this trap. We can also fall in this trap of robbing God of His glory. And you might ask, how? How can we fall into it? Let me suggest that we can rob God of His glory when we accept glory that is due only to God. When we should have deflected the praise and glory that comes along, we must reflect it to God. We accepted it. What Peter and Barnabas did, or Paul and Barnabas did immediately in Acts 14, is a very stark contrast to King Herod Agrippa. You look at the two contrasting passages, Acts chapter 12, Acts chapter 14, what Paul and Barnabas did. Acts 14, verse 11. And when Barnabas heard that the crowd was calling them after the miracle that they have done, that the gods have come down on us, referring to Barnabas and Paul, and calling Barnabas Zeus, and calling Paul Hermes. Now, the Greek knows Zeus and Hermes. They are gods to be worshipped, and they are great speakers. Hermes was a great speaker. And then verse 13, the priest of the Zeus, whose temple was at the entrance, brought oxen and garlands. Now if you are a guy, a preacher, and you have people bringing oxen and garlands to the gate and want to offer sacrifice. Wow. Have you heard of it before? Offering sacrifice in a temple to you. So the response of Barnabas and Paul is very is a thing that you must emulate. They tore their garments. They rush out into the crowd, and they tell the man, why are you doing this thing? How silly can you be? They sort of rebuke the crowd. And we are also men. We are men of like nature as you are. It means we are no gods. We are just human. The only thing that we did is we bring good news to you. We bring good news that you should turn from your ways to the living God. And who is the living God? The living God is the one who made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them. So this is how Paul and Barnabas responded. They did not find any excuse to try to claim that glory. They cry out to the people that they are just mere humans like any one of them. They instantly tore their clothes. They rush out to the people. Let's pause. Have you ever blatantly accepted glory and praise to yourself? Have you? Have you ever seek or fish for fishing? I thought of fishing, but not the literal fish. Have you ever seek or fish for glory? The others must recognize how good or how great or what good work you have done. Beware when you cannot resist the praises and recognition of men. When it seems so forthcoming and you are so ready to accept it, you are at the verge of robbing God of His glory. Be careful when we are called upon to give a testimony. Once in a while we ask you to give a testimony, and then in your testimony, you draw all your attention to yourself, how great you are, how smart you are. Where is the glory to God? Sometimes we draw attention to ourselves. We might not realize it, but the hearers detect it. The hearers are smart. They know somehow in your tone, in your testimony, you're calling more and more attention to yourself. We must be careful. We must be prayerful when giving testimony. Giving testimony is as important, as heavy a responsibility as standing up to preach. Because there you are telling either God's glory or you are in danger of drawing attention to yourself. All right? We rob God of His glory also when we accord to others glory that is due only to God. Now you don't take the glory to yourself, but you give the glory to somebody else. When it is due only to God. When you don't even reference it to God. The world has an elaborate way of bestowing praise and honor. The world has a very elaborate way of doing it. You think of the Oscar, you think of the Emmys, you think of the Nobel Peace Prize, the dato-ship, the knighthood, the state honors, the PBM. You know PBM? All right. Occasionally, we will witness someone who stand up there to receive all these honors, right? And occasionally, we will witness someone who stand there and say, "To God be the glory." But do you remember hearing this? Not often. I dare. We will not be able to find many Christians, so-called, who receive such honor, go up there in the public arena and say, "To God be the glory." But yes, to God be the glory if there was anyone who stand up there and first give glory to God instead of the one who recommended them. You know, to stand up there, you need recommendation. Then your boss might be very offended if you don't mention his name when you give that speech. But not many will go up and say to God. I always find it very uncomfortable to be called to write, or to say something of a nice word to somebody. And worst thing sometimes, to tell you the truth, I fear giving eulogy. I fear giving at the end of somebody's well-deserved life, and then to go up there and say something about him or her. I'm not against doing this. It's in the right place. But I say for myself, I fear. I fear for myself because I might be too obliged to say the right thing. I fear going there to don't have the guts to say something not so nice in the most pleasant way. That's a skill, to say the not so nice thing in the most pleasant way. I don't have that skill. I fear in the process of speaking, the person is unduly glorified. The person may live up to the 80, 90, 100 years and have done great things for the Lord, and we glorify the person. And when we glorify the person, God is not glorified. And I'm terrified that if God is going to deal with me as He did in this passage, be careful that God must be duly and always referred to. He alone deserves the praise and honor. In this matter, we must only search our heart and ask God to give us wisdom, give us humility to say the right thing, not fearful of men, but be fearful of God. It's not easy to say truthfully when we are very naturally inclined to clamor for self-recognition and gratification. So I find passages very the Psalms very helpful. Remember, it is the psalmist who said, "Give unto Lord the glory due unto his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Then not unto us, O Lord, but unto you, unto your name. Unto your name give glory, for thy mercy and for thy truth's sake." In his book, Beyond Finishing Well, Pastor David Wong has written about the confession of a highly revered veteran leader who once had a very long, lengthy introduction to flattering him. The speaker, the chairman tried to flatter him and say, and so this veteran speaker prayed there and then, "Lord, please forgive this brother for praising me instead of you. And please forgive me for enjoying every bit of it." I think that's a very interesting way of putting it all together. Please forgive this brother for praising me instead of you. And please forgive me for enjoying every bit of it. Be careful that we do not hero worship anyone. Not the pastor, not the minister, no matter how senior, how much they have done, how much you feel you owe it to them. Never, 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 never be beholden to anyone in the ministry. I cannot say that more than never, 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 never be beholden to anyone, especially in the ministry. You are only beholden to God, not to men. You only owe your life and being to God. If ever there comes a day when, if you are so beholden to someone, come a day when he does something obviously wrong and you're not able to speak up, you're not able to stand up against him, and you are quick to find excuses for such a person, for all his wrong, you have fallen. You have fallen into the trap of elevating someone above God. You have fallen into a trap of elevating a sinner saved by grace to a sinner glorified above God. Remember, all glory must go back to God. So the next point, I thought, we also may rob God of his glory when we try to fish and solicit praises and recognition for others. We do it very subtly. John 12:43 says, "For they love the glory that comes from men more than the glory that comes from God." I don't think we need example or much illustration. This is a very simple demand. Sometimes we do not even realize when we have done something commendable and we think we have done it, then we ask for what? We ask for feedback. But actually we are fishing for compliments for what you have done, or what I have done that it was at least purely God's enabling. So some would like to respond, "Praise be to God be the glory." As long as that is your sincere response, yes, to God be the glory. Preachers have to be very, 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 very careful here. Ministers have to be constantly reminded that we can fall into this. And so that leads us to the last point. We rob God of his glory when we put on false humility and pretenses. I like how one pastor defined false humility. He says, false humility is the attempt to present a humble, God-glorifying exterior, while the prideful, self-seeking heart pursues praise for displaying a humble appearance. It reminds me of Matthew 23, the Pharisees who are expert in this hypocrisy, and Jesus exposed their false humility. It's not easy to be meek and humble. Humility is such that when you think you have it, you lose it. Agree? Humility is when you think you have it, you lose it. Because humility can be fake. People can be taken in, but God cannot be fooled. Can one be proud of your humility? Should one always deny your good works? How do you handle a genuine compliment? I think we must examine our hearts. What if I were completely or unknowingly bypassed in terms of recognition? Somebody just simply forget to mention your name, You think you were very deserving, but somehow they just forgot to mention you. Can I still thank God and give Him all the glory for all that's done, whether I'm recognized or not? When do we rob God of His glory? Where in your life do you take God's? This morning, you don't need to be a leader or minister or preacher to be accused of this. Even lay Christian can be accused or can literally take credit to themselves. We sometimes take credit and glory to ourselves for what God has given to us, whether it's your talent, your beauty, your intellect, your whatever that seems to lift you up. Do you take that credit? Do you let the credit goes back to God? Maybe you're good in some areas and people recognize you. Maybe you're good writing. Maybe you're good in speaking. Maybe you're good in just something. You have some talent, they call it. It is high time that we remember that we never do the things which King Herod Agrippa did. He drew all his attention to himself. He assumed he was like God. He was God. And it's high time we give God all the glory He deserves. Without Him, we do not exist. Without Him, we can do nothing. He's the source of all good. As we come to the end, I always think we grew up with this. We grew up with these superheroes. Hollywood spend millions of dollars to entertain us, and sometimes when they entertain us, we also get carried away. Some of our children and some young, even older folks, they are so caught up with the superheroes. They pay so much dollars, not knowing that these superheroes actually earn more billions than you. Because of you, they earn billions of dollars. Now I bring up these superheroes because there's a church culture of hero worship. Whether it's from the mega church to the BP church to other denominations, we find gifted theologians at all times. We find very gifted one. We find highly acclaimed speakers, preachers, whether it's John Piper, Tim Kelly, David Plank, R.C. Sproul, John MacArthur, John Calvin, Luther, so many. We find C.S. Spurgeon, Charles Spurgeon, C.S. Lewis, even Billy Graham. We find all these great names. But you know, they are just like you and me. They are also human. They have their flaws. At one time, Ravi Zacharias is mentioned as a great apologist of the time. Now, is he mentioned? Has he fallen? Now his writings and books are all taken away. People don't mention this name anymore. As we end here, we can also we must be reminded that we can fall into this trap, especially if someone godly. We are drawn to that person, the man of God. We are drawn to that pastor, the gifted person. We enter into a cult worship. We enter into a hero worship culture where they leave that servant of God on the pedestal. And when you do that, we rob God because we displace His rightful place of honor and glory. Another person is placed higher than God. Even if it's same pedestal, it is wrong. You know? Even if you put someone side by side, that is already wrong. Don't say leaving him above. Thank God that Paul and Barnabas has set us a very wonderful example in Acts 14. King Herod Agrippa deserved his end. Guys, when such robbery of God's glory is committed, God is more entitled to act even instantly. So may we be reminded of the words again in Isaiah 42 verse 8 that said, "My glory will I not give to anyone. How should my name be polluted?" May we never dare, may we never think or consider, even for a moment, robbing God of His glory. So I hope you understand why I chose beware daylight robbery right in the church. May God help us.